Hi everyone, my name is Jesus Gringo, and this video is titled, Israel was always the terrorist. Israel was never, ever the victim. Now I want to start off by conceding that anti-Semitism is a huge worldwide threat. Neo-Nazis are marching all over Europe, the United States, and they despise Jewish people. We know what happens when Nazis take control because of the Holocaust. So I'm not denying that threat at all. But Israel is the most evil country of all time to use the Holocaust and cry wolf that criticisms about their treatment of the Palestinians are based on anti-Semitism when they know it's nothing of the sort. And you know how everyone knows that? Because the one thing anti-Semites hate more than Jewish people are brown Muslim people. Anti-Semites and neo-Nazis would never, ever criticize Israel for brutalizing the Palestinian people. That's how you know Israel is crying wolf when they cry anti-Semitism. And it disgusts me to the bone that a people that was that brutalized by Hitler would turn around and brutalize another set of people in the exact same way and then cry anti-Semitism if you call out their evil brutalization that's been going on for 50 years. And you know how we know Israel was never the victim? Because international law is clear. The Israeli occupation of the West Bank is illegal. Any person who is occupied illegally has the right to fight back with violence. It's part of the UN Charter. It's crystal clear. The Palestinians have a right to use any form of violence they want until they achieve equality. And that's the great myth. Israel isn't fighting for equality. They're fighting to keep the Palestinian people brutalized. The Palestinians are fighting so that they are equal, can travel freely in their own land, and vote for their own form of government, which Israel has never let them do. Israel has all those rights and uses violence to prevent the Palestinians from getting equal rights. That's how you know Israel has always been the terrorist and Israel has never ever been the victim. That doesn't mean Hamas or people in the West Bank haven't committed violent atrocities against the Israeli people. They have. And I'm not even saying that I justify endless violence. But at some point, Israel has to accept the fact they are an illegal occupation. The whole world has ruled that. The United Nations Human Rights Council, as of 2013, had condemned Israel 45 times. That was pretty much exactly the number of times they condemned the entire rest of the world combined. It's crystal clear. Israel has no defense. Get the fuck out of the West Bank and let them live their lives. If they attack you after that, you could be considered defending yourself. Until that time, you are not defending yourself. You are defending the right to brutalize those people. And you know how you shut up any right-wing Zionist defender of Israel in the United States? Is just pose this question. If Israel invaded us, told us where we could and couldn't go, wouldn't let us have our own government, came in the middle of the night and bulldozed our houses to steal them. That's what settlements mean. They're not taking unoccupied land. Settlements mean Israel came in the middle of the night and bulldozed the houses. If they limited Americans to only 3 or 6 hours of electricity a day, so we didn't even have enough electricity to run our hospitals or process our sewage, do you not think every single American would fight Israel to the death? Of course they would. Every single American would be justified in fighting Israel to the death if they did that to us. Israel has no case. Israel is one of the most evil countries that has ever existed. And the reason is they were formed because of the Holocaust, because they were brutalized. The rank hypocrisy and complete amorality for them to turn around and brutalize the Palestinians in what has been called the world's largest open-air concentration camp after that was done to them is absolutely fucking mind-blowing. And then for them to scream anti-Semitism when the entire fucking world has condemned what they've done? Even the Israeli Supreme Court has ruled some of their settlements are illegal. That's the entire world, their own Supreme Court. And there are plenty of people in Israel that are horrified by what they do to the Palestinians. It's just like people that in the United States that are horrified by what Trump is doing. Israel isn't a united front. There are plenty of Israelis who are thoroughly disgusted by what's being done in their name. And you want to know something else about Israel? They're the only country in the Middle East that ever just attacked us unprovoked. The USS Liberty, they attacked us. They killed 34 U.S. sailors during the Six-Day War. They had to pay millions of dollars in settlements to the families of those soldiers. Israel is the one country that has attacked the United States. Hussein never attacked the United States. Never. We attacked them, but Israel attacked us. Killed 34 of our sailors in an unprovoked attack on the USS Liberty. Israel has always been the terrorist in the Middle East. From the start of the Six-Day War, after which they just continued to steal more and more Palestinian land, bulldoze their homes, kicking Palestinians out in the middle of the night. It's pure fucking evil, and it needs to stop. I completely support the boycott Israel movement. How fucking dare they? How dare anybody play in Israel until they stop that? It's absolutely repulsive the way they brutalize the Palestinian people. They have no conscience to do what they're doing because it was done to them. The United States, I remember when Madeleine Albright went on 60 Minutes and admitted we starved 500,000 Iraqi children to death with our sanctions. And she didn't apologize for it. She thought it was a good thing. I'm not just picking on Israel because I hate Jewish people. I don't hate Jewish people. I don't think they're greedy. I don't think they control the world. None of that nonsense. That is anti-Semitism, criticizing Jewish people simply for being Jewish, criticizing them for brutalizing the Palestinians for 50 goddamn fucking years. They have been monsters. That has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. How dare anyone in Israel cry anti-Semitism after they know what they went through? That's the difference with the U.S. We were never brutalized like that. We never had a Holocaust. So it isn't the rank hypocrisy of Israel. The only reason Israel exists is because the United Nations forced it on the entire world. Their decision was considered binding, and they kicked Palestinian people out of their homes that had been there on that land for thousands of years. Israel expects everyone to accept that UN decision. But when Israel is told, get out of the West Bank, it is an illegal occupation. They refuse to adhere to those UN decisions. 45 fucking times they've been condemned for human rights abuses, and they continue to this day to brutalize the Palestinian people. Well, enough is enough, and enough with the bullshit that Israel is a victim. Israel was never a victim. Israel was never defending itself. Israel was always the aggressor. Israel has always been the terrorist. And until Israel gets the fuck out of the West Bank, the Palestinians have the legal authority under international law to use violence to gain that freedom. And every goddamn American, if they were subjected to the same brutalization by Israel that they're committing in the West Bank, would fight Israel to the death as well. So there is no moral justification. There is no legal justification. Israel is the terrorist. Israel always has been. And I, Jesus Gringo, condemn Israel in the strongest terms possible. And I hope to God they get the fuck out of the West Bank, or that the entire Middle East rises up against them and takes them down. You've had 50 years to get the fuck out. The time is up. The time to keep brutalizing the Palestinians without consequence is over. Get the fuck out of the West Bank. If you are attacked after that, whatever happens, you can call defending yourself. But until you Get out. You are the terrorist. You are the aggressor. You are the ones committing war crimes. I could not possibly respect Israel any less. And I proved without any doubt of any kind that Israel was never the victim. Israel was always the terrorist. Anyway, my name is Jesus Gringo. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching.